Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you all, wherever you're zooming in from, connecting in from. My name's Michael Barrett, and I'm Head of Events and Corporate Social Responsibility here at TR Business. And I'm joined in co-moderating this session by my esteemed colleague, Charlotte Turner, who I will hand over to in just a couple of minutes. I'd like to welcome you all to this third webinar of the 2022 Travel Retail Sustainability Week, entitled Planet and People Part 1. Health and Wellbeing. And we'll be introducing all our speakers in just a couple of minutes. Thanks to you all for joining, and of course to our speakers for the time and effort they've put into preparing this session. But a particular thanks goes to Mars, our headline sponsor for this event, and of course the session sponsors, who are Mars, Beam Suntory, and Diageo. Thanks to all those companies for supporting this particular session. And thanks, of course, to all the sponsors who support this event. We aim to make this sustainability event as available to as far and wide as possible to as many people within the industry, so we can spread the message about all the good things that are happening. So our sponsor support is all the more important. This event we launched in 2021, last year, in the middle of the pandemic. And it's the only industry event totally dedicated to sustainability. This year, the second edition, we have a number of new topics, as well as the topics we talked about last year. And the objective of this event is to share ideas and initiatives, current ideas and initiatives, as well as pipeline projects. And we want you, the viewers, as well as our participants, to use this event as a springboard to generate more collaboration and creativity around all the topics that we'll be talking about this week, in areas that your company may not yet be working on. We try to bring in new concepts and new potential partners from outside the industry, as well as hearing from industry stakeholders. Last year, we had a number of companies from the outside, including the Plastic Bank, with our keynote speaker, David Katz, the CEO and founder of Plastic Bank. And this year we have a number of fresh faces from the industry, from outside the industry. So do make the most of it and connect with them after the event to see how they can help you with your business in sustainability, diversity and inclusion, and so on. So we've got a great program and speaker lineup for you for the next few days. We had a great keynote session and design session yesterday. We've got this health and wellbeing session now, one on diversity and inclusion a bit later today at 2 o'clock UK time. Tomorrow we've got one on circular solutions, looking at upcycling, recycling, another one on the future of food. And finally, on Earth Day itself, Friday, we have a session on the wines and spirits category, and a two-part closing keynote session called Green Influencers, Combining People, Planet and Purpose. So as mentioned, we've broadened the topics and the scope of the topics we're dealing with under the sustainability umbrella this year, with the health and wellbeing session now and diversity and inclusion. And we've got a couple of dedicated events on those topics coming up in June, and I'll mention that a bit later on before we close. I can't obviously talk about our sessions without mentioning the sustainability pitch sessions. We've got one coming up today at 11:30 UK time with Altavia, Gonzalez Baez, Mondelez and Nestle at 11:30 UK time, just after this session. And tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thursday, we'll have L'Oreal, Mondelez once again, Moroccanol and New Wave, all vying for the Travel Retail Sustainability Trailblazers and Travel Retail Sustainability Heroes accolades. Please do participate actively in these sessions. You've got the Q&A function there on your right. Just click on that, ask your question. We'll field those to our speakers, and we'll be monitoring those throughout the session. Also, please note finally that all these sessions are recorded and will be available exactly in the same place where you connected here today, about an hour after the session ends, maybe a bit longer depending on the session. So you can watch it again or tell your colleagues who may have missed it to come back and watch it there. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Charlotte, and I'll see you in a bit later.
Thank you, Michael. As Michael said, I'm Charlotte Turner. I'm the editorial director at TR Business. I've been here for a number of years, I think nearly 11 now, part of the furniture. And today I'm excited to be talking with our panelists today about health and well-being and how their products, the suppliers, are contributing to and feeding into a consumer demand and desire for more organic or vegan or cruelty-free, or there's a number of varieties of products that consumers are now looking for. And of course, Mindsets, Clara will be providing all of the context we need with some incredibly engaging statistics and data on the mental health and how that's changed of consumers before the pandemic and now. Of course, we can all appreciate now there's an increased demand for self-reflection and also for people looking out for their mental health and well-being, putting more of an emphasis on this going forward and really making time for themselves and also spending more money potentially on products that they feel are better for them. There's also another layer to this session, which I hope we can come on to if we have enough time, and looking at how companies are actually looking at the mental health and well-being of their actual employees and how they've perhaps adapted to that over the course of the last 2 years, which of course have been unprecedented. So now I'd like to actually pass on to my panelists the job of introducing themselves, because they do that so very well. So I'd like to start with Clara, who will be kicking off our session in a moment with some data and statistics.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back for this second Travel Retail Sustainability Week. Thank you so much for joining us. So indeed, my name is Clara Suset. I'm the CEO of Mindset. So for those of you who haven't heard of Mindset, we do a market research specialized in travel and travel retail. And I'm here today to share some insights, which I hope will spark some discussion from the panelists later on. So indeed, I'm going to be talking about how mental health concerns have evolved post-pandemic versus pre-pandemic, and how this shapes the expectations of travelers when it comes to duty-free shopping, when it comes to the travel experience and so on. And I very much look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. And now Marie.
Yes, hello, Charlotte. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to be here. I'm in charge of research and development for the group L'Occitane, and very happy, yes, to share about our approach of well-being through cosmetics.
Thank you. And now Miriam. Oh, Miriam, you're on mute.
Well, my name is Miriam. Hello, I'm CEO of Baroque and Rose. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Very excited. Just a little insight on what I do. I've been in the beauty industry for over 40 years. It's my passion. And I'd like to share some ideas with you about Baroque and Rose as well, where Baroque and Rose has originated from in bringing beauty and wellness together. Hopefully, I can put these ideas across to you. Our whole ethos in Baroque and Rose is not only looking beautiful and feeling beautiful, but leaving beauty all around us in the planet. So this is what Baroque and Rose is all about.
Thank you, Miriam. That's fantastic. I look forward to hearing from you a little bit later on. And now to finish, Christophe and Mathieu.
Hello, everyone. We are extremely pleased to be with you today to share this webinar. It's our first webinar for Mathieu and myself. First time we're speaking for this kind of webinars. So we both work for Pure Essential, and we are extremely pleased to share with you the mission of Pure Essential. So from 2005, we got like a big mission, and we're trying just to change a bit the habits in the OTC and well-being products, and we've got like doing well for no more than 15 years.
And I am Mathieu. I am in charge of developing the travel retail market for Pure Essentiel since a big year now. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. Thank you both. And now I think I would like to pass over to Clara, who can provide us with that fantastic context for the session.
Yes, great. Thank you, Charlotte, again. So let's have a look at what travelers have been telling us about their health and well-being and how the pandemic has impacted this. So it will come as no surprise, and don't worry, I will have a lot more positive statistics to share with you later on. But it will come as no surprise to see that actually for the majority of travelers, the COVID pandemic was perceived as having a negative impact on the travelers' mental health and well-being. It had we have about a third of them saying that they suffer from mood swings, they felt worried or restless during the pandemic, and actually 1 out of 4 even said they needed help to overcome some of their more serious problems that they faced. And even now, when in most of the parts of the world we feel rules are getting relaxed and the situation seems to be getting better, practically half of the travelers say they still feel scared or worried despite the situation evolving in a positive way. So just to set the scene, then they're also telling us for the majority of them that their general well-being has declined since the start of the pandemic, and in many cases this is the result of their mental health status declining. So obviously this becomes more and more of a concern for them. So the reasons for this are increased stress, increased general anxiety, but also of course anxiety about COVID-19. So now let's talk about more positive things, and it is what can we do when we think about the shopping experience and the travel experience to improve this feeling from travelers and make them feel better. So one of the areas in which we have seen a total reshaping in terms of how people think is their general attitude towards shopping, and also, for example, the food culture. So, for example, we've seen that concerns around health and wellness are increasingly redefining food consumption behavior. So we see a shift towards obviously more focus on real quality food, positive nutrition, and consumers turning away from processed food and beverages and looking for more fresh products. So therefore, health, wellness, and sustainability has really become a very important part of food shopping for them. But then on the other hand, also the influence of the digital experiences and digital entertainment, with much more focused about feeling balanced, being balanced in their lives. And this is obviously even more so the case amongst Gen Z consumers, but in general, we see travelers becoming more and more actively active on digital media as a way to prevent illness and generally improve their well-being. Then we've recently been doing a lot of research about what sustainability means to travelers. And one of the most important or most interesting questions we had was, what do they think about when they think about sustainability? Because obviously it is a very broad subject that can encompass a wide number of topics. And what was really interesting here is that actually when we ask travelers to define sustainability, according to them, the number one factor that appeared was people's health conditions. So there is this very interesting link between sustainability. Of course, they also talk about the planet, the environment, and so on, but they very strongly link it as well to the impact it has on people's health conditions. So that could be their own health in terms of how what they consume is impacting how they feel and their health, but on the other hand, also how it impacts the conditions of local populations of where the products are being produced, the health of anyone basically who could be impacted by the supply chain of the products which they are consuming. Then we also asked our respondents which type of improvements they expect coming from the brands, because obviously there is a lot of expectations of travelers when it comes to how brands should be behaving and relating to concerns around well-being and sustainability. And we see this obviously in number one and number two, a lot of expectations around consumption of water, around avoiding waste and reducing packaging production and so on. But what is really interesting is that as a number three aspect, we see lots of travelers are actually expecting brands to also take a role in incentivizing the personal health and healthy lifestyles. So as Charlotte alluded to in her introduction, this could be the health of the consumers, but also more and more the health of the employees and anyone involved in the production of the products which travelers are then consuming. Then let's talk a bit about how travelers feel when they're traveling. So obviously, the travel experience was greatly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and 38% of the travelers we interviewed said that at least at one point during their last trip, during the pandemic, they felt stressed. And this raises questions about how to make the travel experience smoother, because we obviously know there is a link between how travelers feel when they're at the airport and then how they're going to behave in retail stores. And then we see that not only they're more stressed, but also they're becoming more and more aware of the importance of feeling well from the mental point of view when they're traveling. So 75% of them have become increasingly aware of this, and they consider this to be more important than they did before the pandemic. Then 85% of them are more worried about their physical well-being while traveling during the pandemic. So this provides lots of opportunities to rethink the entire airport experience, to open spaces dedicated to health, to well-being, to fitness, and so on, so that the travel experience can also become a more enjoyable one for them. And in general, then this obviously has an impact on their overall travel experience. We see that 86% of travelers are saying that more health measures are linked to a good travel experience for them. So they do expect all the stakeholders in the travel experience to take a part in this. And also the majority of them are saying that these type of measures are very important to make them feel safe when they're traveling. Then a part of them have also changed the way they relate to consumption of different personal healthcare products. So for example, we have 1/3 who say they've purchased more personal healthcare products since the beginning of the pandemic. And this shift seems to be there to stay and will remain in the long term, because 3 out of 4 are actually saying they will continue to use hygiene products, such as obviously the hand sanitizer, even after the pandemic has ended entirely. Then we also wanted to understand different activities that travelers might engage to, not only at the airport, but in general when they travel. And what has become really interesting is this increased interest, on the one hand, for more outdoor activities, nature, and so on. So the travelers are looking to reconnect a lot more with nature when they're traveling. And for 1/3 of them, they're actually interested in including elements of relaxation and meditation. So really making their holidays much more about well-being and personal care when they're traveling compared to before the pandemic. And in general, they would like to see this reflected also in their airport experience. So on the one hand, when they are at the destination, they're more likely to seek this type of experiences. But what is really interesting is that we see that for them, the travel experience already starts at the airport, of course, and nearly half of them would like to see more initiatives or offers throughout the trip that prioritize their mental and physical well-being. So they really expect the airport to be a place where, as we said before, they can feel safe thanks to the health and hygiene measures, but also a place where they feel comfortable and they can relax. So they're really expecting the new airport experience to make them feel less stressed, because as we said at the beginning, on the one hand, they're feeling more stressed, but on the other hand, they're also expecting the airport experience to be more pleasant. And for example, this includes to spend less time in queues, to have spaces that have more social distance and so on, and places where they can relax when they're at the airport. So in conclusion, as I said, I started with some not so positive figures as we were discussing the strong negative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on travelers' personal and mental health and well-being. Then we see that the impact of these concerns spans way beyond just their personal life at home. It actually really shapes the way they shop, for example, the way they relate to food as well, and their overall lifestyle. And because we're talking about travelers, we also see the link between those expectations and then the expectations they have when it comes to their experience at airports. So we've seen on the one hand, they are more stressed and they give more importance to their own mental and physical well-being. And on the other hand, they're actually expecting airports and brands, retailers and so on to really step up when it comes to offering initiatives, experiences and so on that prioritize their mental and physical well-being. We've seen that beyond, as a starting point, and just for them to feel safe, they expect health and hygiene measures to be still in place. And that will be for them the number one aspect for a better travel experience. So it's basically just a bottom line expectations for them to feel safe when they're traveling. And lastly, when it comes to the duty-free shopping, specifically, we've really seen an increase of expectations when it comes to the offer of products that focus on their health and well-being while traveling, products that prioritize their personal health and so on. And maybe more generally, I would also like to mention what we saw when we were talking about how people define sustainability, what it means to them. This very important link between, on the one hand, expectations or concerns about the environment, the earth in general, but on the other hand also being very conscious of the impact that sustainability will have and will continue to have on people's health conditions, whether it is the consumer themselves through the quality of the products which they're purchasing, but also the impact on the health of anyone who might be impacted by the production or the waste produced by such products. So that is the end of the insights I wanted to share. If any of the panelists have any questions for me or anyone from the audience, please feel free to ask. And otherwise, I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. I personally found that extremely fascinating, that there's a lot of things that you sort of, on a personal level, I'm sure all of us can actually agree with and chime with and say, yes, actually, I certainly felt that way at various points during the pandemic and increasingly so. And obviously, you found out that the consumers feel that way as well. There's some startling statistics in there. I've particularly found it interesting that 45% still feel scared or worried, even as things are getting better, that things will revert to lockdown or more restrictions, etc. And I do feel like there has been perhaps the airports have relaxed, airlines have relaxed, and they're taking away some of those restrictions. But that doesn't mean that customers are going to fall straight back into feeling normal when they travel. They still have that apprehension, and of course, there's a lot that they can do. But again, providing those products, such as from Pure Essential or Baroque and Rose or L'Occitane, providing those products that sort of as soon as customers will see them on the shelf, perhaps even they'll reach out to them because they're feeling nervous or anxious or whatnot. So yes, I found that presentation extremely interesting. I wanted now to ask our panelists how they sort of reacted to those statistics and data. So Marie, could I perhaps come to you first and see how you sort of digested all of that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Clara. It's a very interesting study, and it does confirm what we have seen previously. I have seen some studies like years ago, and I think travel has this incredible thing of being both exciting and stressful. And when you get to the airport, you're excited because you're going somewhere, but at the same time, you're stressed that everything goes right. And the crisis has just impacted us so much that it's being even more stressful than it used to be. I think that's what I can take from it. But what I thought was very interesting is the evolution that people believe that health, of course, is very important, but health is not just physical health. It's also mental health. It's also emotions. And I think addressing health by this approach of well-being that is inclusive of physical and mental health is very interesting. And people really are conscious of that. And the way we can act on it is also a holistic approach, because we need to act on all these dimensions in order to restore health or to restore well-being. And this is an approach that we take at L'Occitane. We really want to both act physiologically on the skin, on the hair, in a global manner, but also we want to act on pleasure, emotions, and really being well, feeling well. So I thought that was quite interesting to see that. And the other point that I thought was very interesting is how people conceive sustainability. Sustainability is not just nature, but it's nature, it's people all together and all the people. And we can see that health is a concern for everyone, for ourselves, of course, but also the other people, so the other stakeholders, and you really insisted on that, Clara. I thought that was very interesting, but it's also health of the planet. And that again is something that we really want to work on, considering that we have two clients when we conceive a product, which are our final customer, but also the nature. And we need to bring benefits to both when we conceive a new product. So I thought that was a very interesting takeout.
Thank you, Marie. Christophe and Mathieu, what was your take on the presentation?
Yes, sorry, here we got a volume. It was very interesting. Thanks, Clara, for sharing the slide with us. What is very interesting from our side is that all the things you said about the travel and what we can observe in the travel retail, we observe it like many years ago in the domestic market. So of course, with the COVID, we had an acceleration. We had a lot of consequences because of the COVID. So people are a bit more scared about traveling, but they're also more scared in their daily life. And our role, our mission was just to reassure the consumers in the travel retail, but also in the domestic market. And that's why, so we developed all this new routine dedicated for the travel retail. And I think we've got the right answer. And because of the COVID, we had really an acceleration of the needs of the traveler linked to the well-being and consuming like sustainable product also. And it's all the mission of Pure Essentials. So I think really interesting, and it's going to be good for the future because now people, they will be more careful about the product that they will consume also. If you look at the pharmacy in the domestic market, what they were using before for the well-being, for the OTC product, it was a lot of chemical product. And now they go really, really into natural product. They want to know what they are consuming. So there's a lot of changes in the habits of consumptions. And what we really observe in the domestic market, we will observe it in the travel retail. So for sure, we will need to answer to these big problems to the traveler, to reassure them by offering them the right product in the travel retail. And like that, we will help to go back with the normal traffic, hopefully. And I think, Mathieu, you can just...
Yeah, no, me, I'm really reassured by your figures because, yes, we answer to these new trends, but this trend will stay for good. So that will make our business sustainable as well.
So some might say not so much a trend as an actual new beginning as such.
Absolutely.
It's a trend, as you say, that will stay forever. And Miriam, also yourself, I'm sure, you know, from our conversations we've had previously, you also concur with what Clara said.
Well, I thought it was a very, very interesting discussion about how people are reacting to airports and products. And I think it's all now because of the pandemic. While we used to, for example, before, even me going to an airport, I used to always be a little bit anxious. Maybe I'll get an infection, or maybe I'll go into the toilet and get an infection, or touch something that somebody's been ill. But I think COVID has now accelerated these anxieties, and it's brought it to something real. I think it has affected our mental health, and it's made us more aware of how we perceive life, really, and products we put on our skin and food we put in our body, how we dispose of that, because sustainability is not just about the packaging, which is great. I think it's a really, really positive step for not just the beauty industry, but for everybody to look at their packaging and you know, making it more eco-friendly, etc. But I think it's also about the ingredients that we are putting in our body, because at the end of the day, it's all, you know, it's just one person, it's one thing. But when you've got 4 billion people across the world using products, and it's all going into the earth, it's all going into our sewage, that is affecting the planet. And I think this is where Baroque and Rose is coming from through the ingredients. We'd like to leave the less impact with the ingredients as well, because all the ingredients that we apply on ourselves then go, and that's sustainability as well. I think people, through their mental health, need to know that when they're putting on a product or eating something, they're not affecting the sustainability, that they want to feel less guilty, although they want the beauty and the pleasure and the emotion it brings of applying something beautiful or eating something great. They want to know that after that, further than that, the planet is being respected, if I'm making sense at all. So when people buy a product, they expect to buy something beautiful. When we do sustainability, sometimes we present it in a way that's not palatable to the customer. So the customer will not, even though they know that that kind of packaging and that kind of product might be better for the planet, it's not being presented to them in a palatable way. So when they kind of try and buy something to make them feel better, they want it to look beautiful. So I've seen some packaging that, for beauty products that look actually like food. And I'm thinking, how is the customer even going to buy that? If we want them to be more aware of our sustainability, I think we have to present it in a way that customers will accept it. Although I'm fully about the eco-friendly, and that's what I'm about. That's what Baroque and Rose is about. But I think it has to be also presented in a way that customers or people will identify that their emotion and their feeling when they're buying something. We can't separate that. And then that comes also into the mental health of feeling better, looking better, also leaving a better planet behind us. And I think it all has to be in sync with each other. If there's disdact, it's not going to work. But this is why I'm really happy that we're having these discussions and people are opening up about this, because we're on the right track, I think, and we're going to, I think, refine our thoughts and hopefully develop even more our sense of sustainability, the customer, and I think we can only gain from discussions like this going forward. And I think our main topic always has to be centralized with sustainability, because that's what brings our mental health and physical health in sync with everything and with the planet as well. So when people are putting things in our, in our body and on our skin, the skin is the largest organ of the body, so it absorbs everything. Some people kind of think it's just on your skin, but the skin is actually the largest organ in the body. So I think people are more aware of this. I think people want to see more transparency in ingredients when they're buying something to put on their skin. I think it's very important to, I know the the beauty industry has its technical words for ingredients, but customers don't know what they are. And I think that creates some anxiety, because I don't know what it is. You look at the ingredient list, nobody understands it.
Miriam,
I'm talking from a customer point of view now.
Yeah, but before we deviate too much from the customer, as you mentioned that, I'm keen to come back to the consumer insights that Clara was talking about, because we have a couple of questions came in for you, Clara, from the viewers. The first is, how does the impact of the pandemic on health and well-being, consumers' health and well-being, differ from one region to another? You presented, I think there was some global statistics, yes, wasn't it? Yeah. So are there wide disparities from one region to another?
Indeed, so the data which I showed was global, including all regions. The first thing to be said is that the trend in terms of these concerns becoming more important appears across all regions, and it's really something that we observe. What we've seen is that it's actually in Europe where that acceleration was the fastest, the strongest. But this doesn't mean that it didn't happen in the other regions, but Europeans were already to some extent the most sensitive about these topics prior to the pandemic, and they have become increasingly so with the pandemic. Yes.
Okay, and another question that came in for you is, are the mindset findings on health and well-being restricted to the beauty, health, well-being category, or do they also look at other categories, such as the importance of healthier food products? We're obviously seeing a growth in the healthy snacking category, and low and no alcohol products as well, it was mentioned.
So we do have insights around the impact on food consumption, expectations around snacking and so on. So these were questions that we were actually already asking prior to the pandemic, understanding the satisfaction of travelers when it comes to the offer of food which they can find at airports, both in retail and in F&B. So what we're seeing is that indeed there's increased expectations for healthier snacking. So these good for me, but also good for the planet type of snacks. So that we have also seen exploding with travelers wanting to, on the one hand, treat themselves and still enjoy the snacks that they're having at the airport, but on the other hand, being more conscious of the fact that they want something that is good for themselves. Yes.
Thanks, Clara. Charlotte, maybe we can segue into the question to Marie about L'Occitane's and their answer to rising significance of health and well-being in your customers' daily lives, Marie.
Sorry, I was just actually going to draw on a couple of the points that Miriam made, and I was going to put them to you, Melanie, about the quality of products. Obviously has to be second to none, but there is kind of this balance of efficacy versus sustainable and organic products, and I guess L'Occitane has to tread that line beautifully in order to get their consumers to continue buying their products.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to bring both. We have to bring natural ingredients, and this is a clear objective that we have. We have a formulation charter, as a lot of other companies, that we call our clean charter, and where we go and push the boundaries further than what regulation recommends, of course, requires, I would say. And this is where we want to work. Each new product that we conceive has over 95% of natural origin ingredients. And we think that is very important. And we trace these ingredients because, as you were saying, Miriam, people want to know what they're applying on their skin or what they're eating, for that sake. They want to know where it comes from. So traceability is something that we are thoroughly working on. We're working on our suppliers, working with them with agroecological projects to support farmers to produce these ingredients in the best way possible. So in the organic way, but also trying to work on sustainability and reinvesting earth and the plants to have this ecosystem that is a global ecosystem that will be better for nature and better also for the ingredient that we will put in our products. So we work on our specific ingredients that way, and it's quite important to us because this is the way we will act both on the planet and for people's health, because the best quality of ingredients will be there. So that's one of the approach we have. The other approach we have is on rinse product. As you know, we have a lot of shower gel products or bath products or shampoo hair care products. So each time we have products that are rinsed, we work on having 95% of biodegradable ingredients, because everything goes down the drain and it ends up in nature. So it has to be biodegradable to make sure that we are not impacting nature's health. And I'm putting in parallel these two because for us, it's very important to treat both nature's health and people's health. That's why we're working that way on these ingredients.
And do you see that consumers are asking questions more about, for instance, what happens after the product life cycle, and as you say, the biodegradable nature of the products? Do you find that you're getting more questions to staff on the shop floor?
Yeah, we are getting more and more questions, and since we have retail stores, we have the questions directly, which is very interesting, but also on the social networks, of course, we have these questions coming up. There's a rise of interest of people, especially in Europe, that is very important. And the other element that we have is that we feel that people want to be educated, meaning that people do want to be responsible, but they need education. They need to know what is good and what is not good. And I think this is something we need to push even further in explaining what's in the product, how to use the product, but also how to have a routine, a beauty routine that will have less impact. For instance, what we have seen is that 48% of our carbon footprint comes from the use of our product, not from making the product, but the way people and consumers use them. Like, for instance, when you take a shower. Well, each time you take a shower and you wash your hair and then you take a conditioner, then you wash twice, you use twice as much water and twice as much energy to heat the water. And we know this is the biggest impact we have. So we think that educating the consumer is very important, and they want that. They ask for it through our channels. So that's also a main area of focus.
Marie,
sorry,
go ahead, John. All right, okay. Marie, you mentioned Europeans being quite keen on education. I think Mindset and other research institutes data would show that Gen Zs, in particular millennials, are very much looking for greater education, much more discerning in terms of what they're buying, and looking much more into product ingredients, company attitudes to human rights, and all the rest of it. What are you seeing at L'Occitane in terms of the customer profile, being more discerning in terms of age brackets and other demographics?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I agree, all the studies I had seen were also focusing on the younger population. But we did a study just now on elder people, trying to understand their needs. And we know they have physiological needs, but what are their psychological needs? And what was very interesting is that what came up at first is looking at the ingredient list. They want to know as well. And when I talk about elder people, they were people over 70 years old. So they are also very much interested. But again, it was in Europe. I'm not saying it's everywhere. So I think this consciousness that we're talking about is spreading over all ages right now. And it's becoming a common consciousness, which is a great thing, I believe.
Is that your findings as well, Christophe, Mathieu, and Miriam? Christophe, Mathieu, do you want to kick off from that in terms of the age bracket?
Yeah, completely. We can definitely observe that. So people, as I was just telling you just before, they really want to know what kind of ingredient they're using for the product. So before, you were mentioning that, Clara, in your slide. So we observe these trends for the food, and now it's coming into well-being, into health, and definitely the people, all the generations. So it started from the 10 years ago, it was maybe like the mothers, the 40 years to 50. And now you're right, Mary, to say that elderly people also, they want exactly to know what they're using. I'm talking, for instance, for the muscles and joints. So sometimes you're using like a lot of chemical product, etc. And they don't like that anymore because they don't know the side effect that you can have with that. And they are really encouraging the natural health and well-being product. They really want to see that. So I agree with you also, Mary. So we did a lot of studies and we observed that in Europe. But I went lately in the US, and this is more and more this kind of offer that the people are looking for in Asia also. So I think the trends, it's worldwide, and no, we really need to answer to that. And more than that, more than ingredient, also they want to know what is the mission of the company, what is behind this company, what is behind these big names, these Pure Essentials, this L'Occitane, this Moroccan oil. What is our mission? It's not only like to deliver like the right product with the right ingredient, but it's also, and I think you were talking about that, Mary, it's about the people. People is extremely important. The people we are working with, from the suppliers, from the origin of our product to the finished product, it's extremely important that we are following everything. So the ink that we're using for the packaging, the recyclable packaging, the people we are working with around the world to source all our main ingredients. It's extremely important to be sure that working in the right condition, that they're respecting the nature. It's not only to make the best natural product without respecting the nature. So this is a global mission. And Miriam, you were also talking about transparency. And it's extremely important to be 100% transparent to our customers also. So being a sustainable brand and having sustainable product, it's not on, that's a mission. And all together we've got this mission. And we need to make change those habits of the consumers. So for all the generation and all the age. So I think it's extremely important.
Thanks, Christophe. Miriam, do you want to share your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think all that you were saying is what brought me to create Baroque and Rose. I think through listening to my customers, my experience in the beauty industry for the last 40 years plus, it's kind of now all evolving, and in a sense, people, although they, the ingredients list is important and the ingredients quality is important, I think people need to feel included, all of us. For example, my ethos behind my products, Baroque and Rose products, if an apple is good for you, then it's good for everybody. Why would it be restricted to 25 to 35? If something is good for you, everybody wants it. And I think we have to, look at the 40 plus to 70, as you said, Marie. This is why, as I said, I've created this product. We all want to feel inspired. We all want to feel, if I can say this, sexy, and we all want to feel free and liberated. And through products, through things, through music, through theatre, we express our creativity and our individuality and our sexuality maybe as well. So I think it all has to come in with the mental health issues. To look good, you have to feel good. And to feel good, it's all in sync with the sustainability, not damaging anything around you, leaving our planet good for our children, because at the end of the day, this is why we're doing it, because at the end of the day, we want to leave the world in a better situation than we found it, hopefully, and our children will inherit something better than what we found, or what we created, actually. So I think it's all about that. We need to be more inclusive in our products, I think, because everybody wants to feel good, no matter what your age, no matter what your gender, no matter what your orientation in life. I think it's a God-given right to feel good.
Thanks, Miriam.
What I think.
And Clara, does that concur with the mindset? Finally, I preempted perhaps what you would say on that, but does the general findings that it's not just about Gen Z and millennials, but also the older age brackets are interested in greater health and well-being as well, and being more discerning?
Yeah, definitely. I think what changes between the age groups is how they define health and well-being, and what is included in that definition for them, and also how they would like to receive that information, from where, the role which they expect brands to take on might be different. But when it comes to as Miriam was saying, everyone wants to feel good. Definitely, we see that it's really a common trend. And again, that pre versus post pandemic shift is something that we see consistently across all the age groups as well. But maybe the what I would really emphasize is the way in which travelers are accessing that information. We see that, for example, digital elements, obviously apps and so on, take a more important role for Gen Z and for millennials, whereas we see older travelers more likely to expect the brands to really provide that information in the store, or for the BAs to be able to convey that. So ultimately they're looking for the same, but they might not be looking in the same place for that information.
Sure. I was going to actually ask Christophe and Mathieu, what sort of way are you able to communicate with the consumers all of these things about your products? And I imagine that retailers perhaps are putting, maybe not pressure is not the right word, but encouraging you to communicate this more strongly, as we sort of come out of the pandemic, and we know that it's more important to them. Have you had those conversations with your retail partners?
Yeah, I think, we this is our mission again from 2005. So we are discussing a lot with all our retailers, extra with our core values. And I think the best answer will be to get like the videos from our founder, Isabelle Pacchioni. She will definitely explain you the key value of pre-essential, natural, commitment, performance. And extremely important, I think, she's going to be like the better voice for pre-essential, explaining that.
Dans une époque où le greenwashing est à la mode, cette technique marketing dont le but est de donner à une entreprise une image écologique trompeuse, il était important pour Pur Essentiel de réaffirmer ses valeurs et de tout dire et de tout écrire en toute transparence. La charte Pure Transparence permet à nos utilisateurs de trouver sur nos différents sites pays et pour chacun de nos produits toutes les informations claires et clés, identifiées avec des logos très compréhensible. Pur Essentiel, c'est 15 ans de naturel, d'engagement, de performance, de pure qualité, en toute pure transparence, pour encore de nombreuses années d'efficacité à l'état pur. La nature est notre matière première, sa préservation fait partie intégrante de notre quotidien. Notre approvisionnement, notre production sont régis par une éthique 100% éco-responsable, durable. Et en 2020, nous sommes allés chercher plus de 37 000 tonnes de matières premières végétales pour fabriquer les 280 produits de notre gamme. La performance, c'est notre volonté constante de rechercher le meilleur afin d'atteindre l'excellence. L'ensemble de nos formules est à 94,84% d'origine naturelle. La caution du Made in France sur l'ensemble de la fabrication. L'approvisionnement de tous les articles de conditionnement est à 99,55% européenne et à 71% française. 100% de nos formules sont véganes, 100% de nos formules sont cruelty-free, 100% de nos produits sont compatibles avec les normes antidopage. Plus de 500 études cliniques et tests de tolérance, d'efficacité et plus de 3500 tests d'analyse, de développement sont effectués en collaboration avec des médecins hospitaliers, des centres de recherche indépendants. Depuis toujours, l'engagement et le partage sont au cœur de notre ADN pour un monde préservé, naturellement meilleur, dans le respect de la nature, mais également des femmes et des hommes qui la cultivent. Au quotidien, à chaque étape de la fabrication de nos produits, de la récolte à la livraison, Pur Essentiel est engagé dans une démarche 100% éco-responsable, solidaire, durable. Et depuis toujours, Pur Essentiel soutient de nombreuses associations qui partagent les mêmes valeurs au sein de la Fondation Pur Essentiel, avec pour mission la protection de la nature, de l'enfance et de la santé pour mieux vivre ensemble tout naturellement. Au total, 42 projets qui ont été menés avec 26 associations partout dans le monde depuis 3 ans. Ainsi, par exemple, la Fondation a permis la protection de plus de 18 000 enfants, familles, l'accès aux soins de santé pour plus de 16 000 enfants, la plantation de 330 000 arbres et la protection de plus de 2 millions d'abeilles.
That was a fantastic video, and thank you for sharing that with us. I wanted to pick up on the Pure Essential Foundation, which many people might not know much about, and I wondered if you could sort of elaborate on that for us.
Yeah, it's something extremely important for Pure Essential. The foundation, it started 4 years ago around like 3 big categories. So we really want to defend childhood, nature, and healthcare. This is the 3 core value of the foundation. And so we've got like projects around the world, and everybody in the company is involved in this foundation. So each area of the company can propose to defend an association. It could be in France, can be in Africa, it can be like really around the world. And around those 3 big categories, it's extremely important. So we've got, we are financing 15 to 25 projects every year. And we've got like very clear objectives for each foundation. We really know, we want to know how they're using the money and what will be the objectives each time that we are investing in a station. So extremely important. And again, it's linked to the core value of Pure Essential. So the foundation and Pure Essential are completely linked. So when you were talking, Charlotte, how we are talking to retailer, when we're talking to retailers, to distributors around the world, we're talking about the mission of Pure Essential. Again, I like this word because it's for the foundation, it's for the company, and it's for the supplier, it's for the people working at Pure Essential, and all together we are defending this mission. So this is the key message, I think.
And it's interesting you mentioned picking up on people as well, and taking care of people as much as we are of the planet. And we had a very interesting conversation yesterday during the keynote where Tessa, who's the founder of Olio, an app that deals with diverting food waste, so doesn't become food waste at all. In fact, it's reused and redistributed. Fascinating talk we had, and I encourage everyone to look back on video on demand and watch that session. And you know, she actually said that the people, the companies that she worked with and connected with, the employees actually had a benefit to that, because they felt good about the company's food waste no longer being food waste, and having to, you know, physically take out those bins every day and give them to a, you know, a waste management company, rather than doing that, connecting it with a family that needs it. She said that had a you know, another benefit to the employees themselves. And I thought that was a really interesting part of the conversation. You know, we shouldn't just be talking about the consumers, which of course they're extremely important, but it's also about the mental health and well-being of our own employees and how they feel. And I wanted to actually touch on that subject actually in our conversation now. Marie, obviously L'Occitane is a huge company, and I know this is not necessarily your area of expertise, but I thought you might be able to share some light on how the company was able to sort of look out for the mental health of its employees, as many, I'm sure, were forced to work remotely, or perhaps were furloughed or made redundant even, and how they were able to kind of you know, keep on top of how they were feeling, and what sort of procedures were in place.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not my area, of course, but we did a lot of work on this. I think the COVID situation had a huge impact on the employees. People had to work remotely, and it was incredible that we were able to do so. But some people had to work in the plant. I mean, we did do a lot of, what's it called? You know, the hygienic, hydroalcoholic solutions. So we produced these during that time. So we had people that were very much engaged. And I know from the team, some of them did that in their house to make the first trials to get the product done so that the plant could work on it. We could produce some more and diffuse that in the hospitals all over France. So it was very interesting to see that people were getting connected for a greater purpose than just their work in a time with such difficulties. And I think that helped a lot the people, because all our employees were really dedicated and doing everything they could to participate for the health of the entire nation, but also for their own health, and working together and keeping the company working as well, which was very important. So that was something during the pandemic. And now that we're coming out of it, we see something else. It's like travel. People are not always at ease coming back to work because they're frightened. They were told for months, you need to stay home, and then they're told you need to come back to work. So it's exactly like travel. It's a mixture between excitement to see people again, but a little bit of fear of being ill and stuff like that. So we work a lot. We had a psychological help for people in the company that was put in place. And I think that was a huge help for people. And I think, and that comes back to what Christophe and Mathieu were talking about, I think the purpose of the company is so important. People feel dedicated. And I found an energy that is incredible. I joined the group a year and a half ago. Like, I joined during the pandemic. And I was amazed by the dynamisms and the engagement of everybody. Everybody is so committed because they trust the values of the group and they want to work that way. And the idea behind that is just, we want to change the world. And I think this creates a community that is very strong and that help us stand in front of all these issues and all these crises that we are going through. And perhaps the second element is that, of course, we also have a foundation, and we have about the same things that we've been talking about with Christophe and Mathieu, so I won't go on that area. But on the other area, there's a lot of work with our partners, our suppliers. And to give you one example, we use a lot of shea butter that comes from Burkina Faso. And we had a huge program called Resist to work with women. And there's over 10,000 women that are working for us in Burkina Faso to produce this butter. And the idea was to help them learn how to preserve nature, preserve the trees, so that could offer them the nuts for the shea butter, to help them work on how to produce themselves the butter, and that their health would be less impacted, So it was like, you know, trying to put machines in place that would help them in their daily job. Okay. And the last part was helping them diversify their resources. And I think this work was led by an agronomical engineer in the company. And I think having this kind of a relationship with our partners and doing something good to our partners is something that really creates this engagement in the company. And that helps people in the company feeling good. And if you're doing something right that you believe in, that is your purpose, then you feel way better. And I think that's also why it's important to work in adequation with your values in a company.
Absolutely, in collaboration with all stakeholders as well. We touched on that during our keynote session yesterday, and also some of those elements you spoke of are obviously very similar to those processes in food and confectionery for duty-free industry. And of course, we have a session on the future of food tomorrow, and we'll talk about the traceability of various ingredients. And again, it's quite similar with the food and confectionery category, those elements that you spoke of. I also wanted to ask you a question about ancillary beauty products. So those disposable sort of cosmetics pads and cotton buds and various other things related to that. And I wanted to know if consumers again are kind of pushing back on the need for those and asking for more products that can be used with flannels and things obviously that are reusable, and how L'Occitane has sort of adapted to that over the years. I know that a number of its products actually don't need any other ancillary products to make them work, but maybe perhaps there were some in the line that have been phased out.
Yes, absolutely. On each jar we had a little spatula. Okay, so we have removed totally this spatula from the box and the jars of our creams, and we offer one when people ask for it, and we explain to our customers that they can wash it and reuse it many times. They don't need one in each jar. This is something that is very easily reusable. And I think this is something that we try to push, is reuse of our packaging throughout different configuration. One of them is what we call the Doi pack. It's a recharge, okay, that enables us to reduce the plastic use, because you take your bottle and you refill your bottle. So we have already over 25 products that have these rechargeable products, and we're pushing more and more into that field. We're doing also what we call the fountains, where you can refill in the boutique your product, and there you can have a very nice packaging that you can refill several times. And what I believe is that in terms of packaging, there are two ways to go. One way is eliminating packaging, reducing it so much that you almost eliminate it. And that is all the focus of solid cosmetics. Because if you have solid cosmetics, then the packaging, you really only need a paper folder just to keep it safe. But you don't need a bottle, you don't need plastic or anything. That's one way to do it. We won't be able to eliminate totally the packaging. The other way, and I think it's very interesting as well, is to have a very nice packaging that you can reuse, that you will really like, and create a real affection with this object that is a beautiful object that pleases you, okay? And you put some effort in it, but then you will reuse it along the days, and you can reuse it very many times, because we work on packaging that you can rinse, etc. And I think these are both ways we need to work on.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine, Miriam, that there are some things that Marie is saying here that, again, you can sort of concur with. There is that kind of, I guess, that age-old problem in duty-free and travel retail, where there are many products that are travel exclusives, or which require another set of procedures to create that packaging. And sometimes the packaging itself, the materials, because they want to convey luxury, again, themselves are not very good for the environment. So there is that kind of fine line that we have to tread in the travel retail industry, conveying luxury and something that is special and bespoke, but then again, the processes to create those things are not so good for the environment. So I wanted, Miriam, if you had some insight on that.
Yes, I think it's all finding balance, really, isn't it? although we'd like to think we have the technology maybe to process things and bring things how we would like to see them now, I'm not sure if it's possible from the technology side, although our emotions and our feelings are that we want to bring it to the best level that we can, but obviously we're human and we can only work with what we've got at present. So I think it's finding the balance, because if you create something that is unpalatable, I mean, bear in mind, we've been projecting and marketing beauty for 70 odd years to the customer in a certain way. Now, all of a sudden, in 2 or 3 years, we want to change all that and we want it to be accepted. And I think that's very difficult, because if you look at people individualistically, when they buy a product and they want to feel good and they want to feel luxury, they're going to forget about the sustainability because, oh, it's not going to make much difference because it's just me. So that in the psychological sense of a customer, that's the way they will perceive it, in my opinion. And so although they want the sustainability, but kind of a cheap, oh, it's just for me to feel pampered. So I think we need to find a balance to go ahead, because it's useless, having sustainable packaging that's unpalatable to our customer, because they're just not going to go for it. And that's how I feel, talking from the luxury industry. So this is why I've tried to use eco-friendly packaging as much as I can, glass in the packaging, because people, when they look at luxury and when they look at beauty, they want to feel good, and that's where the feel good factor comes from as well. Not just, we're not damaging our planet from the sustainability side of it. We as humans from Stone Age have always adorned our bodies with paint and stuff and trying to show people our status. So it's inbuilt in us, whether we realize it maybe or not, or accept it or not. We always want to feel better by looking better. But I think it's an innate thing we have as humans. It's about creativity. It's about expression. So even buying a product expresses who and what you are really, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And also perhaps it's the responsibility of the industry, the beauty industry, and also the travel retail industry, to encourage consumers to change their perception of what they should expect from packaging and whatnot. I think that is happening to a certain degree now anyway. I think there definitely the fields are in motion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we've come a long way, but I still think people need to see luxury presented in luxury.
I wonder, Clara, do you have any research actually? I mean, I know that you've done some separate research on sustainability and how consumers perceive packaging and whatnot. I'm wondering if you could sort of help us illuminate here.
Okay. So I actually had a product a few years ago, which was organic.
So, sorry, Miriam. I was actually talking to Clara because I was
so sorry.
No worries.
We can certainly come back to you, Miriam, on that for sure.
Maybe I can share the insights, and then Miriam, you can tell me how it relates to your experience. So indeed, we in the sustainability study that you were referring to, Charlotte, we had a question where we were asking people what are the most important elements in making a product sustainable and what they would look for when buying sustainable products in travel retail. And we saw that packaging, when taken together, was clearly one of the most important aspects in making a product sustainable. And what we saw is that the first thing that people would expect is actually reduced packaging. So there is a more and more common perception that products are being over packaged. So products being recyclable is not enough. They just expect less and more simplified packaging. Then the second element was for the packaging not only to be recyclable, but actually to be recycled, so that it is already coming from recycled or even better, more natural ingredients. And then, yes, as the last factor, they're talking about being able to recycle the packaging, but it's more about making it more rational and not having a box within a box within another box and so much plastic and so on. So yeah, definitely. So I don't know, Miriam, how that relates to your experience.
Oh, you're on mute, Miriam.
Yeah, through customers, and I've even been in the streets talking to people when I had another organic brand, and it was an experiment really for Baroque and Rose, just to see how people react. Although they wanted what was in the jar because it was organic, they didn't like the presentation. So because of the presentation, it deterred them from buying the product. So although my take on it is, although I come from a sustainable brand, eco-friendly packaging, I still want to present it to them in a beautiful manner that will be acceptable for them, so they buy it. Because the products, the ingredients are excellent and they're good for them. And this is why it's also unisex. All products in Baroque and Rose are unisex, and the age is not, in the equation at all. As I said, if something is good for you, it's good for you, full stop. And also, but I'd like to give my discerning customers, it's a niche product. It's not, it's a very, very nichely made product for discerning customers who want something luxurious, who want luxurious ingredients. I mean, the ingredients are very luxurious, like figs, pomegranate, sea fennel, prickly pear. So they're very quite unusual ingredients because I'm Mediterranean. I'm actually from Malta. So I wanted to bring a piece of the Mediterranean to the beauty industry in my own little way, and share these ingredients. But as I said, the customer, although they like what they see in the jar, although they want it to be sustainable, although they want it to be eco-friendly, they still want to see it presented to them beautifully, that made them feel good as well. Mm-hmm. Because
yeah, but and perhaps a part of that is, and the missing piece of that is education going forward. Maybe there's a way that we can educate consumers and say, you're used to seeing this, and in a say, if you looked at the packaging, which product would appeal to you more, they may choose the one that looks more luxurious. But perhaps there's a way that as an industry we can collectively engage and educate, so that they can see the difference that the impact of those two packaging would make. I believe I've got two hands up. You're being very polite. Thank you, everybody. Christophe and Mathieu, I believe your hands were simultaneously raised, and then Marie, I'll come to you.
Now, we have had this challenge internally because travel retail for us is the opportunity to premiumize the brand within the beauty category, when in domestic it's more in pharmacies. So we needed to create those travel exclusive in a very luxurious way, etc. And since our packaging are already done 100% with recycled material, we even have a project for a circular life cycle where we will collect in the point of sale all the aluminum bottles of our bestseller to put them back in the life cycle. So we had this challenge internally, and our approach to the luxurious packaging for those travel retail is a second use, how to reuse with the afterlife of the product this packaging. So it's all about education. We can navigate through all those challenges, and that creates the opportunity to solve all that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Marie, you wanted to make a point as well.
Yes, I totally agree with both what Myriam and Christophe said. I think it's very clear that people want something beautiful. Okay, they want beauty in their life. So education is a major part, because you can change it through education. You can change the perception of things. That's one way to go. But the other way is to work on it. And for example, when you take recycled plastic is not transparent. Okay, because it's recycled, so it has a color, it's less beautiful. So for example, for white milk, if you put it, it's not going to be nice. It's going to be sort of gray, etc. But then we need to work on it. And so we partnered with different industries that are working on chemical and enzymatic recycling of plastic that brings the plastic back to monomers, really the first element of plastic, to rebuild just pure new plastic. So by working with these industries, by pushing them because we want the best quality for our clients, well, we make the industry move and find new ways of doing it. And I think we need to push both ways. We do want beautiful packaging, and we need to push the industry to get this beautiful packaging. And at the same time, we need to educate the consumer.
Absolutely. I think that there's also another element of this, which is obviously L'Occitane is a huge global corporation, and is able to, he's got a huge, I guess, a team that is able to put all these resources into these new, finding these new technologies and partnering with these companies. Of course, there are smaller companies that perhaps don't have the same budgets and don't have the same size teams to work on it quite as much. But, you know, it's up to the L'Occitanes and the L'Oreals and the Estée Lauders of this world to push forward in this regard, be the trailblazers and make it easier and hopefully less expensive for all companies to do it. And that's when we really make progress.
Yeah, and I believe when we work in this area of sustainability, it's for everybody in the industry. I mean, we need to push because we have the power to push, but then it's available for everyone. When we partner with Loop or Carbios, we really push them to do this chemically recycled plastic, but it will be available for everyone. It's not part of us and it's not for us, and we don't patent this kind of progress. We really want it for the entire industry. I agree.
Michael, I was just wondering if we had any more questions from the audience at this point.
Yeah, it's they're all coming in anonymously for some reason, but there's a question coming back to the video which you showed, Christophe and Mathieu, about again on education and customer communication. The question is, these buttons, les boutons that Isabelle was talking about in the video, are something that many brands use but define differently. How can the customer know? How do you communicate to the customer? On what basis you, the brand, define your own buttons?
What do you mean about the buttons? The icons that define the sustainable?
I believe it's that. Yeah.
So it's true that it's quite difficult to have, there's no worldwide certification, so it's quite confusing. So in terms of travel retail, we are working with the retailer to create those natural corners because it's all about the, Isabelle said it's a marketing trend to put all those green buttons everywhere. So it's not anymore, I think, good enough to have a green button on the packaging, but it's also the work we have to do with the retailers to select the correct product. So we are working with them, and we want to thank them because they are creating the spaces in travel retail for those natural corners where we are all together with Moroccanol and L'Occitane. But it's also the work of the retailers to select the actual brands that are doing the correct thing and that are doing this 100% and not just to answer the trend with marketing greenwashing.
On top of that, just to complete a bit the answers of Mathieu. So it's all of, so we're talking about the education about like packaging, about using sustainable product, etc. But there is also the education into like OTC and well-being product, like consuming the right product. I'm not talking only the packaging about like luxury, looking luxury extra, but what there is inside. And all about like this education. So all the bouton, as you said, Michael, that we're using extra, it's for the outside, but for the inside. And what we have inside is extremely important. So the education is global again. So it's for all the outside. What are the consequences if you are not using recyclable product, ink, vegetable ink, etc., etc. But what do you have inside, and how do you need to educate that? So that's why, and Mathieu has said pretty well, we need to educate the consumers. That's why we need the retailers. We need the main actors in travel retail. We need the main actors in the domestic market. And we are creating this routine also. So, and today we are really lucky because we're living in a very modern way, and we've got the digital. And it's a new way also to educate the people. And the digital, in my point of view, will be the key things also to educate the consumers. Of course, we cannot have like staff all the time to educate the people. So we need just to pass this message to the final consumers. And the digital is going to be one of the key things for us.
Yeah, and that's, I was going to say, that's something that Mindset has pinpointed, and I'll come on to another question to Clara about that in a minute. But coming back once again to the video and the work on the foundation, and then the question also refers, Marie, to the work you're talking about that L'Occitane does with communities as well. The question is, do you communicate, both of you, Pure Essential, the work of the foundation and L'Occitane, the work with communities, to consumers and trade customers? Or is the policy just do good but don't shout about it, like true messina, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. We don't really communicate about it.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's not. We're not going to use the foundation to sell more products. Absolutely not the objectives. It's again. So it's the global mission. So this human mission, it's part of Pure Essential. Doesn't mean that we're going to use it to sell things. So the Pure Essential is a global story. It's a family story. There is no hedge fund behind extra. It's 100% financed by the family. And this family finance also this foundation at 100%. But there is like two missions. First is to rethink a bit the OTC and the well-being. At the same time, it's helping many associations around the world. But it's two different things.
Thanks.
Having the same core values.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a foundation is messina, and it's not meant to bring business. What we try to do is push the foundation work and the business work together on the same to have more impact. That's what we try to work. And again, we don't speak much about it. And what I think is that we don't want to communicate to sell more. But I think we need to communicate to educate, which is a different purpose. And I really think we need to communicate more on what we do and how we do it, just to give the example to people so that they can do things as well. And what we see is that people ask for it. More and more consumers ask for knowing what we are doing and knowing what they could be doing as well. And I think it's part of the communication that we have to have. It's part of an education, but it's not really part of selling more in a way. So it is tricky. And I know the company is not communicating much on it. It's like we want to do things right. And then we're never good enough to communicate about it.
It's a bit of a dilemma though, because as Clara can point out, in the trends that Mindset has identified for 2022, personal healthcare products, digitalization that you mentioned, Christophe, and conscious consumerism, and across all the world regions, particularly Asia Pacific from memory, Clara, the consumers are being much more discerning, and they're wanting to know what brands are doing. They don't want to hear about all this greenwashing, and so you're in the dilemma. And Moroccan Oil actually did say the same thing in a recent interview with Carmen Dalby, the founder, that their principles was just do good for the sake of doing good, because that's their DNA, just like it is with both your companies. But they're having to communicate it more because the consumers are demanding it more. So you're obviously going to be in that predicament where you're going to have to communicate more on it, I would imagine. And Clara, is that confirmed by what?
Yeah, I was just pulling out some data. So indeed, we see that overall there's a consensus that actually, so amongst travelers, the majority, 75%, think that brands in duty-free are taking more steps towards sustainability in the last 2 years. And the good news is that for more than half of them, those efforts are perceived to be credible and perceived to be quite genuine. So that's a very important point that we wanted to understand, whether it felt like just greenwashing, just empty communication or not. And actually most people find those efforts believable. What they do say is that they still feel that for many brands, there remains to be a lot of effort done when it comes to the manufacturing process to make it cleaner. So that is really the area on which they expect more action and not only communication, I'd say.
I think we're drawing the session to a close shortly, but before we do, what we have been asking our panelists to do over the course of these sessions is to come up with some next steps or actions they might take following this session and indeed the Travel Retail Sustainability Week this year. And perhaps it could be something as simple as discussing what we've discussed with their peers, or taking it up the chain to management and saying, look, I was really interested to do this before, and now I'm really certain that I want to do it now. Or perhaps it's reaching out to a certain stakeholder, perhaps weren't brave enough to do so before, to really say, no, you should be stocking my products because they're fantastic for this reason or whatever. So I wanted to go around the panel and see if there's any next steps that you'd like to take following this session. And then I want to encourage you to, if you do take any action, to come and tell TR Business all about it, so then we can cover it on the website and share again with the industry to share the benefits that you gained. So I'd like to go to Christophe and Mathieu first, please.
Yes, what is really interesting out of this session is already to have this session labeled health and well-being. It does show the trend, and this is our mission, but we also discover, and we already knew, that we have a few friends in the industry going into the same direction. So what is really important for us is, as mentioned, there are many greenwashing, etc. So to work as peers, to create that space, natural health and well-being for the travelers in travel retail. I would really love to speak with L'Occitane, and we already do, but to create those spaces in the airport, so the message is clearer, and we bring a solution and education to the travelers.
Thank you. That sounds like a great next step. And Christophe, did you want to add anything there?
Well, I think that's pretty clear. Mathieu said that in a nice way. And I think also, like the two things that Marie, you mentioned was really interesting. The material that you're using for packaging and all the things that you're using could be really interesting also to exchange with you about this new development that you are currently doing. And we're really pleased to share with you. And again, I think together, we will be stronger. So if we want to make change the habits, we should not work outside, but we should work all together. And I'm pretty sure we will make change habits of the consumers all together.
See, you have plenty to add. I'm glad you spoke as well. Marie?
Yes, absolutely. I totally share what you say, Christophe. I think we need to work all together, and meaning all together is also meaning all the industries. And I think it's great that you're having this webinar with all the different industries, because not one company is going to change the world, but all together we might be able to do something. So that for me, collaboration is the most important thing we can do for the planet. And what I would what I'm taking out of this, also focusing more on travel retail, is how could we build experiences, meaningful experiences for travelers? I think this is, we've talked about a lot of education. So probably bringing education as an experience for people who have time when they're just waiting at the airport, that would be meaningful for them. And then bringing them also spaces for well-being where we could mix, and I agree, several brands could go together to offer this well-being and wellness experience so that people would feel good. I think we could work both aspects and have a different way of addressing the experience in the travel retail.
It's interesting you talked about creating experiences and almost a subliminal educational element to it. Lagardère actually staged a great example of that with the United Nations and sort of helping tell consumers how they could obviously how they could contribute to helping the planet and people and all of these things through their sort of PEPS plan, which they talked about during the keynote. And now on to Miriam. On mute. Sorry, Miriam, you're on mute.
I'm really happy to hear about all this positivity in our industry. It's my passion. It's something I love. I've lived my life in the beauty industry, and hopefully I can bring something to the table to it as well. But as Christophe and Marie said, you know, I think if we all pull in together, we'll create the experience that the customer really thrives on, and I think is important in our life, because we need aspiration, we need inspiration, creativity, through any manner, as I said, through music, through skincare, through And I think when they're in airports and places like this, where they have the time on their hands and we can actually create that experience for them, I think is very, very positive for our well-being, for business, because that's what we're all here for as well. And I think together we can all create this experience for our customer. Through that, we could be able to educate the customer, as Charlotte said sublimely. And I think it's also through design. So through the design, it allures them through the eco-friendly packaging, because just because it's eco-friendly doesn't mean it has to look any other way than beautiful. Through our designs, we can also, give our customer the experience, the inspiration that they need in their life. I think we all need in our life.
Absolutely. And finally, Clara.
Yes, I just wanted to build on Marie's point about creating an experience and having different brands coming together. And in fact, that perfectly reflects what we see from our insights, in the sense that what we see as the main barrier for people to shop for more sustainable products in travel retail is the confusion around the assortment and not being able to navigate, feeling overwhelmed and so on. So actually we have a very important share of travelers telling us they would enjoy having a space dedicated to more sustainable products in travel retail, which doesn't necessarily need to follow the same segmentation by categories, but just having, across all the different categories. Here are the as you said before, sustainability trailblazers, to have some star products in terms of sustainability, for them to be able to locate those more clearly, and have a more experiential part of the visit to the store there, where they can really get more information, spend time with store advisors, really get to know more about those brands, because otherwise what they're saying is that it's really difficult for them to within the clutter of all the assortment, to understand what is really sustainable and what is not, and also what makes it sustainable.
Absolutely. Clear up messaging and make sure that the communication is crystal clear. Well, that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you to our fantastic panel. I've really enjoyed hearing from each and every one of you, and you've added some fantastic contributions and some points I've not heard of before. So I've certainly learned something during this session. So thank you to all of you. And of course, all those that are watching, thank you for joining us today. And if you have any colleagues who you know would be interested in this material, you know that this session will be available to view on demand in the coming hours. So please do return to the platform and encourage your employees to and your peers to watch this back. So I'll pass on to Michael now for some final remarks.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte, and thanks to all our panelists as well. And my apologies as we're asking those final questions to our speakers. And after all those anonymous questions that had come in, we had some more questions come in with named questions. So apologies to, and thank you to Julie from Laseni from ETRC, to Sonia Jalali from Bangalore Airport, and Stuart Dryberg from Nestle for your questions. And we'll share those with our panelists, but thanks for sending those in. You will have an opportunity to put more questions to panelists on this topic, on health and wellbeing, on June the 15th, Wednesday, June the 15th, as we do a dedicated webinar on this once again, because there's so much interest on it, and another one on diversity and inclusion on June the 1st as well. So do mark those in your agendas. So we look forward to seeing you there, as well as, of course, in Singapore at the TFWA Asia Pacific event, where together with Mindset, we'll be curating a session on sustainable futures. And we look forward to seeing you also in Cyprus on the 5th to the 7th of September for a physical event, back to live once again, with the Travel Retail Consumer Forum, which is another joint collaboration with our friends at Mindset. And again, later this year, it seems a long way off, but in Cannes on the 4th of October, we'll have the Travel Retail Awards ceremony for the awards, which again is another collaboration with Mindset, where the awards are the only consumer voted awards in the industry, where thousands of Mindset's database of consumers vote on your submissions to the best category, award by category, but also the best sustainable supplier award. So do send in your submissions for those, because entries are underway at the moment. We'll be closing at the end of May. So we look forward to receiving your entries and seeing you at the award ceremony in Cannes, at a venue to be announced very soon. On the 4th of October. And of course, we'll see you a bit later on. We've got the sustainability pitch session coming up shortly, in about 1 hour. And at 2 o'clock UK time, the diversity and inclusion session, part 2 to this session on D&I later today. Thanks again to the speakers and the sponsors, Mars, Beam, Centauria, and Diageo, and enjoy the rest of this week, and see you later. Take care. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.